There's a dealer lot about 40 minutes out of Brisbane where I counted 11 brand new utes parked nose to tail along the back fence, all the same brand, all wearing bill plates from last year. And every single one of them had that fine layer of red dust that only settles on a vehicle that hasn't moved in months. 11 of them. Same spec near enough. And here's the thing that should stop you cold. This is supposed to be the year Chinese cars conquered Australia, and on paper they did. In February this year, for the first time in almost 30 years, more new cars sold in Australia came from China than from Japan. 22,362 vehicles in 1 month. Chinese brands are now nearly 1 out of every 5 new cars sold in this country. BYD moved over 52,000 cars in the first half of the year alone, up 124%. Sherry has posted 13 consecutive record months. That's the headline. That's what the press releases say. But I've spent enough years around dealerships and auctions and trade-ins to know that headlines are averages and averages hide bodies. Because while a handful of Chinese models are selling faster than they can ship them, there's another group, a dozen of them, sitting on lots gathering dust, getting discounted, getting quietly pulled from sale. Some of them selling in numbers so small that supercar brands are outselling them. Actual supercar brands. I'm going to walk you through all 12 with the real registration numbers because those numbers tell you something no advertisement ever will. And I'll tell you the one thing almost everybody gets wrong about a car nobody wants. Because a slow seller can be either the best deal on the lot or the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. And the difference between those two comes down to one question most buyers never think to ask. Stay for that part especially, because that's the part that'll save you real money. Before we get to the list, let me show you what's really going on, because you can't read these numbers properly without it. The Australian new car market right now is the most open, most crowded, most cutthroat market on the planet. No local manufacturing left to protect, so no tariffs on Chinese cars, which means they land here at close to their real cost. 10 new brands have entered this market since 2020, and 9 of them were Chinese, with a dozen more lining up behind them. Every one of those brands shipped cars here on a forecast, a spreadsheet somebody built in a head office. And the spreadsheet always says the same thing. We'll take 5% of the segment. But the segment doesn't care about the spreadsheet. Australian buyers turned out to be brutally selective. They'll happily buy a Chinese car, they're doing it 100,000 times a year, but only the right Chinese car. The rest pile up. And a car that piles up on a dealer lot isn't just an awkward statistic. It's a machine depreciating in the sun, it's floor plan interest bleeding the dealer every month, and eventually it becomes a discount with your name on it, or an orphan with your name on it, sometimes both. So let's count them down 12 to 1, worse to somehow even worse. Number 12, the GWM Tank 500. Now this one might surprise you, because GWM as a brand is flying. 52,809 sales last year, up 23%, the 7th best-selling brand in the whole country. Every model in the range went up. Every model except 2, and this big luxury off-roader was one of them. The Tank 500 dropped 9% last year to 1,519 units, and it's fallen another 13% through the first half of this year. 629 sales while everything around it in the showroom booms. Why? Because it walked into the one fight in Australia. You don't pick casually. It's a ladder frame 7-seater, priced up near 80 grand for the top hybrid, which means it's asking Land Cruiser Prado money from Land Cruiser Prado people, and Prado people are the most loyal, most conservative buyers in the country. They'll forgive Toyota anything. They'll forgive a newcomer nothing. And the Tank 500's hybrid-only powertrain was exactly the wrong answer for that buyer, because the bloke towing a van across the Nullarbor wants a diesel. Full stop. GWM knows it too. That's why they're switching the thing from hybrid to diesel power, which tells you something we'll see again and again on this list. It's usually not the whole car that's wrong. It's one decision made in a meeting on the other side of the world by people who've never towed anything through Australia. Number 11, the Skywell ET5. And if you just said what's a Skywell, congratulations, you've identified the entire problem. This is a mid-size electric SUV sold here by a small Brisbane-based importer called EV Automotive, and it's aimed, in theory, at the same buyer as a Tesla Model Y and a BYD Atto 3. In practice, the importer's own boss told the motoring press that their sales targets were, and this is his word, extremely modest. when the guy whose job is selling the car opens with extremely modest, believe him. The car itself isn't a disaster. It's a screen heavy, softly sprung electric crossover like 40 others. That's the issue. In 2021, being a cheap Chinese EV was a niche. In 2026, it's the most crowded knife fight in the market, and a brand with a handful of outlets, no name recognition, and a distributor smaller than some dealer groups simply cannot buy its way into the conversation. And this is where I want you to start thinking about that question I mentioned, the one that separates a bargain from a trap. Because a slow selling Toyota is still a Toyota. A slow selling Skywell is a car whose parts, pipeline, warranty support, and resale value all depend on one small company deciding every year that it's still worth the bother. That's not a car price, that's a bet. Number 10, the LDV MIFA People Mover, the Petrol One. People movers are a small pond in Australia. The Kia Carnival drinks most of the water, and the Petrol MIFA finished last year ahead of only 2 Volkswagen vans in its class, one of which was being run out of production anyway, which effectively makes it the van nobody chose. And it's a shame in a way because on paper the MIFA gives you 8 seats and a mountain of standard kit for tens of thousands less than a Carnival. But a people mover is the most rational purchase in motoring. Nobody buys one with their heart. The buyer is a family or a shuttle operator doing sums on a notepad, and the sums kept coming back to the Kia. Because the Kia has a decade of resale history behind it, and the MIFA has a question mark. When your whole pitch is value, and the buyer is the most value-obsessed buyer in the market, and they still walk past you, that's the market telling you the drive-away price isn't the whole price. Hold that thought. It's the thread running through this entire list. Number 9, the LDV MIFA 9, the electric version of that same van, and now we go from slow to genuinely astonishing. 3, that's the number. 3 of them sold in all of last year, not 300. 3, as in you could fit last year's entire customer base in the second row of one of the vans they didn't buy. This was a $100,000 plus electric people mover, and in December, LDV quietly paused sales of the MIFA line altogether. What happened? Timing and price, the two old killers. The MIFA 9 landed asking 6 figures right as newer, sharper electric people movers turned up. The Zeekr 009 above it, the Volkswagen ID. Buzz taking the headlines, and more on the way, the Denza D9, the Xpeng X9. In a niche that small, being second best isn't a silver medal, it's a funeral. And here's your first hard lesson in orphan cars. The 3 people who bought a MIFA 9 last year now own a paused model from a shrinking brand in a segment measured in dozens. When it comes time to sell, the used market won't ask what it costs new. It'll ask, what's this? And that question costs the seller thousands. Number 8, the Leapmotor C10. This one's a lesson in how brutal the internal competition among Chinese brands has become, because the C10 isn't being beaten by Toyota. It's being beaten by Leapmotor. The C10 was the brand's launch car in Australia, a mid-size electric family SUV distributed through the Stellantis dealer network, which on paper is a huge advantage, real showrooms, real service departments, day one. And through the first half of this year, it managed 268 sales. Its own little brother, the B10, a smaller, cheaper SUV that arrived later, has already overtaken it with 511. The whole brand did 779 cars in 6 months, and in that same 6 months, Geely, another Chinese newcomer chasing the same buyer with the same style of electric SUV, did almost 11,000. Same country of origin, same price bracket, same kind of car, 14 times the sales. So don't let anyone tell you Australians are rejecting Chinese EVs, they're rejecting specific ones, with a precision that should frighten every product planner in Shanghai. The C10's crime was arriving as a single, unknown model at a price where the BYD and Geely alternatives were simply a better known, better supported bet. In a price war, almost as good as another way of saying unsold. Number 7, the Photon Tunland. Here's a name that'll ring a bell if you've been around utes a while, because Photon had a crack at Australia back in the early 2010s with the original Tunland. A cheap, rough workhorse that never caught on, and then they packed up and left. Now they're back after more than 8 years away, with a genuinely re-engineered ute, bigger than a Ranger, a 2-litre turbo diesel with a 48-volt mild hybrid system, making 120 kilowatts and 450 newton meters. 3,500 kilo towing, a 7-year warranty priced from $39.90 before on-roads. On the spec sheet, it's a lot of truck for the money. And in its first month on the sales charts, it managed 97 registrations. 97 in a country that buys utes the way other countries buy bread. Now, to be fair, that's month one, and month one is hard, but it points at the deeper truth of the Australian ute market. This is the most trust-based segment we have. A ute buyer isn't buying a car, he's buying the next 10 years of his working life, and he remembers. He remembers the brand that left. The Tunland's real competition isn't the Ranger, it's the memory of the first Tunland, and no touchscreen in the world towers that memory away. Number 6. The JAC T9, and now the ute story gets properly grim. The T9 arrived with a sensible pitch, a budget diesel dual cab from about 42,500, sold through a decent-sized dealer network, a rival to the GWM Cannon and LDV T60, and in June this year it registered 35. 35 utes, down 70% on the same month last year, with only 359 sales through the end of April. To put that in perspective, the Ford Ranger does more than 35 before morning smoko on the first day of the month. And what's killing the T9 isn't Ford or Toyota. It's the same thing that's killing half this list, friendly fire. The BYD Shark 6 came in and hoovered up every buyer who wanted a value ute with a story to tell. And it left the T9 exactly one selling point, cheapness, in a segment where the incumbents started discounting and the newcomers kept multiplying. Jack's response is telling. An even cheaper cab chassis version from $38.90 and a headline-grabbing plug-in hybrid called the Hunter with 1,000 Newton meters to try to change the subject. But when a brand's answer to nobody's buying is lower the price again, you're watching the resale value of every T9 already on the road get decided in real time. That's the part the drive-away price never shows you. Every discount a struggling brand offers new buyers comes straight out of the pocket of the poor bloke who paid full freight last year. Number 5, the MG U9. And this one hurts more because MG isn't some unknown. MG has been the Chinese success story in Australia, top 10 brand, 100 plus dealers, the badge your neighbour already owns. They took their shot at the biggest, richest segment in the country, the dual cab ute, with the U9, a big, well-equipped truck at 52,990 drive away. And the market shrugged so hard you could hear it. 94 units in April, fewer than 700 for the year by that point. At 53 grand drive away, the U9 isn't even properly cheaper than a mid-spec Hilux or Ranger, once the discounting starts, and that's the fatal spot on the price ladder. Too expensive to be the value play, not established enough to be the safe play. Meanwhile, the whole MG mothership is wobbling, slipped to 11th on the sales charts, 18,000 odd sales to the end of May, its weakest start in 5 years, right as BYD, GWM and Chery blew past it. There's a lesson in the U9 for every brand on this list. A badge that means great value. Hatchback does not automatically mean anything at all on a ute. Trust doesn't transfer between segments. It has to be earned in each one, toe ball by toe ball. Number 4, the LDV T60, and really the whole LDV ute story. The T60 was one of the original cheap Chinese utes in this country, and for years it did honest business on a simple promise, most metal for least money. But the brand fell 22% in June to 1,229 sales across its whole range, and the T60 is the reason why. It's old. The bones of this thing go back the better part of a decade, and while it aged, the market it invented got invaded. The Shark 6 took the headlines, the Cannon took the value crown, the T9 and Tunland undercut it, and its own replacement, the Terran 9, started lurking in the showroom next to it. That's the cruelest position in the car business, the outgoing model. Everybody knows the new one's coming. So nobody wants the old one, so the discounts start. So the trade-in values of every T60 in the country sag in sympathy. If you own one, that's not abstract. And if you're shopping one, understand exactly what the sticker is telling you. They're not discounting it because it's a secret bargain. They're discounting it because time is doing to that ute what no competitor could. Number 3. The GWM Aura, the little electric hatchback with the friendly face, and honestly one of the clearest case studies you'll ever see in a car being killed by its own segment. The Aura dropped 38% last year to just 763 sales, while every petrol and hybrid GWM around it grew. They threw $2,000 of discount at it, another grand for ABN holders, free servicing campaigns, drive-away pricing from $33,990. Didn't matter. And now it's officially in run-out, discontinued in Australia for an indefinite period, with production of the Thai-built version winding down, and a new thing called the Aura 5, a small electric SUV taking its spot at the exact same price. Read that again, because it's the whole modern car market in one sentence. Same money, but the hatchback dies and an SUV takes its parking spot. The Aura wasn't a bad car. Owners quite like them, decent range, 5-star safety, 7-year warranty. Its crime was being a hatchback in a country that stopped buying hatchbacks, at a price point where BYD kept lowering the floor underneath it. And every Aura that sold new for high 30s a couple of years ago is now sitting in the classifieds, watching brand new ones get advertised for $33,990, drive away with the discontinued sticker on the model line. That's a depreciation double tap. The discount, then the discontinuation. Number 2, the MG Cyberster. The $115,000 electric roadster, 121,980 drive-away, scissor doors, 375 kilowatts, 0 to 100 in 3.2 seconds, a genuinely dramatic thing to look at. And here is the single most brutal sales statistic I have ever read about a mainstream brand. As of late last year, the Cyberster was being outsold in Australia by McLaren. McLaren, whose cheapest car costs over $430,000, more than 300 grand extra, sold 60 cars in 10 months, and that was enough to beat MG's Halo Roadster. Think about what that means. It's not that Australians won't pay 6 figures for a car, they demonstrably will. They're queuing up for Land Cruisers and Range Rovers and apparently McLarens. It's that at 120 grand, a car stops being transport and becomes a statement, and nobody yet wants their statement to be MG. The badge that sells $30,000 hatchbacks brilliantly becomes an anchor at 4 times the price. The engineers did their job, that drivetrain is genuinely quick. The accountants did their job, it undercuts every European convertible. But the badge does the heavy lifting at that end of the market, and you cannot engineer a badge. You can only wait for it, decades usually, and MG Australia decided not to wait. The market answered with a number so small the brand doesn't like saying it out loud. And number 1, the Lotus Emea. Yes, Lotus, and before you write in, look at where the thing is built and who signs the checks. Lotus is owned by Geely, and the Emea is built in a gigafactory in Wuhan, China. It is, by manufacture and by ownership, a Chinese car wearing a British badge, and it is the slowest selling new car in this entire story. 3 sold last year. 3 for $177,990, 450 kilowatt electric super sedan. That by every road test I've read is genuinely excellent to drive, comfortable, fast, beautifully finished. Doesn't matter, because the Emea is trapped in the same badge problem as the Cyberster, just 1 floor up. The buyer with 180 grand for an electric 4-door buys a Porsche, and the buyer who wants a Lotus wants a 1,500 kilo fiberglass go-kart with a manual, not a 2.5-ton luxury EV. Meanwhile, Mercedes has been quietly offloading its own unloved big electric sedans with discounts touching $100,000, which tells you the whole top end of the electric market is a bonfire, and the Emea walked into it holding a badge that stands for the opposite of what it is. 3 sales. A supercar money ghost, brand new, sitting in showrooms right now. So that's the 12. Now here's the part that actually matters, because you might be wondering why any of this keeps happening. Why do factories keep shipping cars nobody wants to a country on the other side of the ocean? And the answer is that this isn't a mistake, it's arithmetic, and every party in the chain has a reason to keep the conveyor moving. Start at the factory. China's car industry has built more manufacturing capacity than the entire planet can absorb, and a factory only makes money running. A car exported to Australia at a thin margin, or no margin, is still better for that factory than a production line standing still, so the ships keep coming, whether Australians asked for the cars or not. Then the local distributor, whose executives are judged on market entry and brand presence, numbers that go up the moment cars land on a wharf, long before a single customer says yes. Then the dealer, who's often required to take stock to keep the franchise, and who pays floor plan interest on every unit every month it sits there, which is why that dust I saw on the back fence in Brisbane isn't laziness, it's a man bleeding quietly. And when the pressure gets bad enough, the discounts start, and here's the part nobody puts in the ad. There's no money for anyone in telling you a slow seller's real story. There's a great deal of money in selling you the drive away price and letting you find out about the resale value on your own 3 years from now at trade in time when the same dealer offers you a number that makes your stomach drop. The discount you got going in was never a gift. It was an advance on the depreciation you'd pay coming out. And the guy who paid full price 6 months before the discounts started pays it worst of all. Nobody in that chain is evil. The factory's protecting jobs, the distributor's protecting targets, the dealer's protecting cash flow. But notice that every one of them gets paid at the moment the car changes hands, and only one person in the whole chain is still holding the thing when the music stops. You. And there's something underneath all this that I think is worth sitting with for a minute. A car is the second biggest purchase most people ever make, and we've somehow let the conversation about it shrink to one number, the drive-away price, printed in a big yellow starburst. But a car isn't a price, it's a relationship. 10 years of parts and panels and resale and some bloke at a counter either having your window regulator in stock or not. The old-timers understood this without being told. They bought boring, common, proven machines, not because they lacked imagination, but because they'd learned that the cheapest car over 10 years is almost never the cheapest car on day one. That knowledge is quietly draining out of the culture, because there's no money in teaching it. Every ad, every launch event, every influencer road trip is pointed at day one. Nobody profits from year 8, but you live in year 8. That's the thing, the marketing lives on day 1 and you live in year 8. So here's what I want you to do with all this, because a list of slow sellers is only useful if it changes how you shop. First, before you buy anything, and I mean anything, Chinese, Japanese, whatever, look up the actual monthly sales figures. They're public. VFAX numbers get reported by every motoring site. It takes 5 minutes. If the model shifts fewer than a couple of hundred a month nationally, stop and ask why, because thin sales today means thin parts supply, thin dealer expertise, and a thin crowd of used buyers when you sell. Second, separate the two kinds of slow seller. And this is the question I promised you at the start. Is this car slow because of the car or because of everything around the car? A Tank 500 is slow because of a powertrain decision. The brand behind it is huge, growing and committed, so a deep discount on one might genuinely be a bargain. A Skywell or a MIFA 9 is slow because the entire support structure is a question mark. And no discount is deep enough to cover a car whose brand might not answer the phone in 5 years. Ask it as one question, out loud in the showroom if you like. If this brand left Australia next year, what happens to me? If the salesman can't answer, you just got your answer. Third, if you do hunt a run-out bargain, and there are real ones on this list, buy the discount, but budget the depreciation. Assume the resale will be ugly, do the total sums over your ownership, and only sign if it still wins. And fourth, never ever pay near full price for anything selling in these kinds of numbers, because you now know the discounts are coming, they're structural, they're baked into that overbuilt factory on the other side of the water, and the only question is whether they arrive before or after you sign. Do those 4 things, and here's where you end up. A year from now, some mate of yours is standing on a lot, dazzled by a yellow starburst on a ute that moved 35 units last month, and you're the one who quietly pulls out a phone, shows him one sales chart, and saves him 15 grand and a decade of regret. That's the whole game. Not knowing every car. Knowing what the numbers are trying to tell you before the market makes it obvious. Now tell me in the comments below, what's the rarest brand new orphan you've spotted, sitting on a dealer lot near you, dust on the bonnet, plates from last year? And if you've actually owned one of the cars on this list, a T60, an Aura, even one of the 3 MIFA 9s, I genuinely want to hear how it's treated you, the good and the ugly, because the owners always know things the sales charts don't. And reading those replies is honestly the best part of doing this. While you're down there, subscribe if you haven't, because next time I'm flipping this whole story on its head. The Chinese cars Australians can't get enough of. The handful of models genuinely embarrassing Toyota right now, and the one number buried in the reliability data that suggests at least one of those runaway sellers is about to hand its owners a very expensive surprise. You'll want to see which one before your neighbor buys it. Until then, keep your eyes on the numbers and your hand on your wallet, because the lot is full, the discounts are coming, and now you know exactly which dust-covered bargains are actually bargains. I'll see you in the next one.